Hello there, and welcome to the Daily Dose of Lore. Tonight, we're drifting into the world of fire and blood, where dragons once darkened the skies of Westeros, and the ancient empire of Valyria burned brighter than the sun itself. Let this be your moment to settle. The world outside can wait. We're exploring every dragon that ever lived in this world, from the first creatures of flame in the Freehold to the three who were reborn in Daenerys Targaryen's arms. If this helps you unwind, a like helps others find their way here too. But for now, let's begin our journey through 5,000 years of dragon history. In the eastern reaches of Essos, beyond the Jade Sea and past the ruins of empires, lies a place shrouded in perpetual twilight called the Shadowlands of Asshai. Ancient texts whisper that this is where dragons first emerged, creatures born of fire and shadow in a time before history was written. The wyverns that still haunt those dark mountains are said to be distant cousins, lesser things without the intelligence or majesty of true dragons. The people of Asshai, who practice blood magic in their black stone buildings, claim their ancestors witnessed the first dragons rising from volcanic fissures, their scales reflecting firelight like living jewels. The air in those lands is thick with ash and the smell of sulfur, and the ground is warm to the touch even in the coldest months. Travelers who venture to Asshai speak of seeing shapes moving in the distant mountains, winged silhouettes against the red sky. Though whether these are true dragons or mere wyverns, none can say with certainty. Whether this legend holds truth or merely echoes the dreams of those who live in shadow, we cannot know with certainty. The origin of dragons remains one of the great mysteries of the world, a question without a clear answer, lost in the mists of time before the written word. Some maesters suggest dragons were created through blood magic, fused from wyverns and fire by ancient sorcerers. Others believe they arose naturally from the volcanic chaos of the world's formation. The truth, like so much about dragons, remains shrouded in mystery and myth. The Valyrian Freehold rose to dominance not through armies of men alone, but through the power of dragons. 5,000 years before Aegon's conquest, the people of the Valyrian Peninsula discovered something extraordinary. They learned to bond with dragons, to ride them, to shape them into weapons of unimaginable power. The secret lay in blood magic, ancient sorcery that bound dragon to rider through mystical ties that lasted until death. The rituals involved are lost to history, destroyed in the Doom. But what remained was the knowledge that only those with the blood of Old Valyria could form these bonds. The Dragon Lords, as they came to be called, were 40 families of ancient lineage, who alone possessed the knowledge to claim dragons as their own. Each family maintained multiple dragons, breeding them, training them, passing the knowledge of bonding from generation to generation like a precious inheritance. At the height of Valyria's power, hundreds of dragons circled the 14 flames, their shadows crossing one another in an endless dance of wings. The sky itself seemed alive with fire, and the roads of Valyria were lit not by torches, but by the glow of dragons roosting on towers of fused black stone. The sound of their roars echoed through the valleys, and the heat from their breath kept the city warm even in winter. Valyria was not merely a civilization. It was a manifestation of dragon power made into architecture and culture, a place where humans and dragons lived intertwined. The power of the Valyrian Freehold extended across much of Essos, and at the heart of that power were the dragons. With dragons, the Valyrians conquered rival nations, burning their armies and cities until all submitted. The roads they built were made of fused stone, melted by dragonfire and shaped by magic into smooth, unbreaking surfaces that lasted for thousands of years. Their mines delved deeper than any others dared go, protected by dragons who could clear tunnels with their breath and whose heat allowed miners to work in conditions that would kill ordinary men. The Valyrians used dragons to forge weapons of unmatched quality, heating metal to temperatures no ordinary forge could reach, creating Valyrian steel blades that never dulled and never broke. They used dragons in their wars, of course, but also in their daily life. Dragons transported goods across vast distances, provided warmth in winter, served as status symbols and protectors. A dragon lord family without dragons was no family at all, stripped of power and prestige. The entire social structure of Valyria revolved around dragons, and those who rode them stood at the apex of power. It was a civilization that could not exist without dragons, and when the dragons died in the Doom, so too did Valyria. The Targaryens were not the greatest of the dragonlord families in ancient Valyria, merely one among 40. They held their dragons, maintained their bloodlines, and practiced the same blood magic as their peers. They were minor nobility in the grand scheme of the freehold, respected but not particularly powerful, overshadowed by houses with larger dragon collections and older lineages. But 12 years before the Doom, something changed for House Targaryen. Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of Lord Enar, experienced visions that shook her family to its core. She dreamed of fire consuming Valyria, of the very mountains exploding and the freehold drowning in flame and ash. In her dreams, she saw the 14 flames erupt simultaneously, saw the land itself split apart, saw dragons falling from the sky in flames, their riders screaming as they plummeted into molten rock. She woke screaming these visions night after night, until her father could no longer dismiss them as mere nightmares. Her father, taking her visions seriously when others might have dismissed them, made a decision that would echo through centuries. He relocated the entire Targaryen household to Dragonstone, a lonely volcanic island in the narrow sea, far from the glory of Valyria. He took their 5 dragons, their household, their wealth, and abandoned the freehold. His peers mocked him for this retreat, calling him craven, laughing at his daughter's nightmares, suggesting he had lost his nerve or his mind. But Daenerys the Dreamer, as she came to be known, had seen true. When the Doom came and Valyria died in a single night of cataclysmic destruction, the Targaryens alone among all the dragonlord families survived, their 5 dragons the last in all the world. The Doom of Valyria came as a series of volcanic eruptions so powerful they shattered the land itself. The 14 flames, the ring of volcanoes that had powered Valyrian magic and industry for millennia, exploded simultaneously in what may have been a magical catastrophe or a natural disaster. The truth died with those who witnessed it. Some whisper that the slaves of Valyria, who had been oppressed for generations, discovered a way to break the spells that kept the volcanoes controlled, unleashing the fire that had been bound for so long. Others say it was simply the Earth's fury, a natural cataclysm that could not be prevented. Whatever the cause, the result was apocalyptic. The Valyrian peninsula broke apart, creating the Smoking Sea, a body of water so poisonous and thick with ash that ships that venture there are rarely seen again. The sea boils in places, heated by volcanic vents, and the air above it is unbreathable, thick with toxic fumes. Every dragon in Valyria perished in the flames, along with their riders and the accumulated knowledge of 5,000 years. Hundreds of dragons fell from the sky, their wings burned, their bodies broken, crashing into the molten stone that had once been their home. The fused black stone roads cracked and split, swallowed by lava. The great buildings collapsed, their towers falling like trees in a storm. What had been the greatest civilization the world had ever known became a poisoned wasteland, haunted by demons and twisted things. Sailors speak of seeing strange lights over the smoking sea at night, hearing sounds like distant roars, finding debris that seems to be part dragon bone, part volcanic rock. Only on distant Dragonstone did dragons survive. The 5 dragons of House Targaryen suddenly becoming the rarest and most precious creatures alive. The world had lost its fire, and only one family kept the flame. Dragonstone itself became the Targaryen seat after their flight from Valyria, a volcanic island rising from the narrow sea like a black fang. The island is dominated by the volcano at its center, which still smokes and rumbles, its heat keeping the island warm even in the depths of winter. The castle of Dragonstone was built using Valyrian magic, its towers carved into the shapes of dragons, their mouths serving as machicolations, their eyes as windows, their wings spread along the walls. The entire fortress seems alive, a monument to dragon worship made in stone. Beneath the castle are vast cave systems, warmed by volcanic vents where dragons made their lairs. These caves became the breeding grounds for Targaryen dragons, dark chambers where dragon eggs were kept warm by the earth's heat, where hatchlings learned to fly in the shadows before emerging into sunlight. The island's black beaches are composed of volcanic sand that glitters in certain lights, and the rocks are sharp and treacherous, discouraging invaders. The air smells of sulfur and salt, and the sound of the volcano's rumbling is a constant presence, like the breathing of some immense creature buried in the earth. Dragonstone was not merely a fortress, it was a home specifically designed for dragons and those who rode them, a place where the bond between Targaryen and dragon could flourish away from the eyes of those who might covet such power. For over a century after the Doom, the Targaryens remained on Dragonstone, neither conquering nor expanding, simply surviving. They were the last dragon lords in a world that had forgotten what that meant. Their 5 dragons bred slowly, producing eggs and hatchlings that kept the dragon population alive, but did not expand it dramatically. Dragons, it seems, do not reproduce quickly or reliably. A she-dragon might lay clutches of eggs over her lifetime, but many of those eggs would never hatch, turning to stone as magic faded or conditions proved unsuitable. The Targaryens guarded their dragons jealously, never selling eggs, never allowing outsiders to attempt bonding with them. They watched the continent of Westeros across the narrow sea, saw the 7 kingdoms warring with each other constantly, saw opportunities and threats. But they waited. It was not until Aegon, who would become the conqueror, inherited the lordship of House Targaryen that the decision was made to act. Aegon looked at Westeros and saw kingdoms divided, saw power fragmented among many kings, and he made a calculation that would change history. 3 dragons could conquer 7 kingdoms. The time of waiting was over. The age of fire and blood would begin. Balerion, the Black Dread, was born in Valyria before the Doom, making him one of the last dragons to know the freehold in its glory. He was already large when the Targaryens fled to Dragonstone, and over the century that followed, he grew and grew until he became the largest dragon that had ever lived. His scales were black as midnight, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making him difficult to see against a night sky. His eyes glowed with molten red fire, burning with an intensity that seemed to pierce into the soul. When he opened his jaws, they were large enough to swallow a mammoth whole, and his teeth were as long as swords, sharp enough to pierce plate, armor as if it were parchment. His wings, when fully extended, could cast entire towns into shadow as he passed overhead, blocking out the sun so completely that day became twilight. The sound of his roar could be heard for miles, a deep rumbling thunder that shook the earth and made stone walls tremble. Those who heard it felt the sound in their chests, a physical force that made their hearts skip beats. Balerion was not merely a dragon. He was a force of nature, a creature that seemed to embody the very essence of fire and destruction. His breath was so hot that stone melted before it, running like water, and his presence alone was enough to make armies break and run. Those who saw him could never forget the sight, the terrible majesty of the black dread in flight, wings spread wide, fire trailing from his jaws, a living nightmare made flesh. Even other dragons seemed to fear him, giving him space when he roosted, avoiding him during feeding times. He was the king of dragons, and he knew it. Aegon Targaryen, who would become known as the Conqueror, was the first to ride Balerion after his grandfather Aerion passed. The bond between them was absolute, a connection of mind and will that made them nearly invincible in battle. Aegon was not a large man, but mounted on Balerion, he became something more than human, a figure of legend wreathed in smoke and fire, carrying Blackfire, the Valyrian steel sword of House Targaryen. Together they would conquer a continent, but before that conquest, Balerion knew the long years on Dragonstone, flying over black volcanic stone and dark waters, the last of the ancient Valyrian dragons waiting for a purpose. The dragon and his rider shared a patience, a confidence, a certainty that their time would come. Aegon would spend hours simply sitting with Balerion, not riding, just being in the dragon's presence, understanding his moods, learning the way he breathed before unleashing fire, the way his muscles tensed before launching into flight. And when Aegon decided to claim the Seven Kingdoms, Balerion was ready. The Black Dread had been forged in the fires of Old Valyria, had survived the doom that killed all others of his kind, and now he would forge a new kingdom across the sea. Together, man and dragon would become legend. Vhagar was one of the 3 dragons that Aegon brought to Westeros for his conquest, and she was ridden by his sister wife Visenya. Vhagar was not as large as Balerion, no dragon was, but she was formidable nonetheless, a creature of bronze-green scales that gleamed like old metal in the sunlight, with undertones of darker bronze that caught the light differently depending on the angle. Her wings were vast, and when she spread them, the membranes showed veins of darker green running through the bronze. She was fierce in battle, matching Visenya's own warrior spirit, for Visenya was not like her sister Rhaenys. Where Rhaenys was gentle and beloved, Visenya was stern and martial, a warrior queen who carried the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister and wore armor as comfortably as most women wore gowns. Vhagar was born on Dragonstone, one of the new generation of dragons after the Doom, hatched from an egg warmed in the volcanic caves beneath the castle. She would live for nearly 2 centuries, growing slowly but steadily, becoming older than any dragon except Balerion himself. Her size would grow tremendously over those long years, and by the time of her death in the Dance of the Dragons, she had become the largest living dragon, a mountain of bronze-green scales and muscle, scarred by a lifetime of battles but still immensely powerful. But in the days of the conquest, she was young and fierce, her flames burning bright and her loyalty to Visenya absolute. The two of them were a matched pair, both warriors, both uncompromising in their pursuit of victory, both more feared than loved. When Vhagar roared, it was a sound of pure aggression, a challenge to any who would oppose her rider. Together, Visenya and Vhagar represented the martial might of House Targaryen, the iron fist inside the velvet glove of diplomacy. Meraxes was the third dragon of the conquest, ridden by Rhaenys, Aegon's other sister wife. While Balerion was black and Vhagar bronze-green, Meraxes wore scales of silver and blue that shimmered like flowing water under the sun, with the highlights of pale blue that made her seem almost ethereal when she flew against a clear sky. She was larger than Vhagar, though smaller than Balerion, and she was said to be the swiftest of the three, her wings cutting through the air with elegant power, her body streamlined in a way that made her movements seem effortless. Rhaenys loved flying more than her siblings, spending hours in the sky on Meraxes' back, exploring the coastlines and mountains of her new kingdom, visiting lords and small folk alike, bringing the presence of House Targaryen to every corner of the realm. The dragon seemed to share her rider's joy, performing aerial maneuvers that left observers breathless with wonder, barrel rolls, steep climbs, followed by controlled dives, graceful turns that showed off the beauty of her silver-blue scales. Together, they were the face of Targaryen grace and beauty, a stark contrast to the terrible power of Balerion or the martial strength of Vhagar. Rhaenys was called the Queen of Love and Beauty, and Meraxes was her perfect complement, a dragon whose appearance inspired awe rather than terror. But Meraxes was no less deadly for her beauty. Her flames had consumed armies during the conquest, burning with a heat that matched her darker siblings, and her presence in the sky was enough to make enemies surrender without a fight. She was beloved by Rhaenys, and Rhaenys was beloved by the people, and so Meraxes became a symbol of the softer side of Targaryen rule, proof that dragons could be magnificent as well as terrifying. The Field of Fire was the moment when Westeros learned to fear dragons, when the age of castles and armies ended and the age of dragons began. King Mern IX of the Reach and King Loren V of the Rock had joined their armies together, creating a host of 55,000 men, the largest army ever assembled in Westeros, a combined force that outnumbered any host that had marched before. They had cavalry from the Reach, heavy knights in gleaming armor, pikemen in disciplined formations, archers by the thousands. They had supply trains that stretched for miles, siege equipment, and the confidence that comes from overwhelming numerical superiority. They marched to meet Aegon's force of barely 11,000, confident in their overwhelming numbers, certain that no matter how fearsome dragons might be, sheer weight of numbers would prevail. After all, dragons were beasts, and beasts could be killed. The armies met on a broad field, and for a time it seemed the kings might be right. Aegon's forces were being pushed back, pressed by the sheer mass of soldiers arrayed against them. But Aegon had not relied solely on swords and spears. When the battle was joined and the armies clashed in earnest, when the fighting was at its fiercest and the two great hosts were fully committed, Aegon gave a signal, and all three dragons descended from the sky at once. Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes had been circling high above, so high they were barely visible, waiting for this moment. Now they dove, wings folded, falling like meteors, and at the last moment spreading their wings to arrest their descent and unleashing their fire in unison. What followed was not a battle, but a massacre, a demonstration of power so overwhelming that it ended the age of traditional warfare in Westeros. The three dragons created a wall of flame that swept across the field, moving in formation, their fires overlapping and reinforcing each other. The heat was so intense that men's armor began to heat even before the flames touched them, burning the skin beneath. 4,000 men burned to death in the first minutes alone, and the armies broke in terror, trampling each other in their desperate attempts to escape the inferno. The grass itself burned, the air became too hot to breathe, and those who survived spoke of men turned to ash in an instant, their bodies simply ceasing to exist as the dragonfire consumed them so completely that not even bones remained. Steel melted like wax, running in rivers across the scorched earth. Horses screamed and bolted, throwing riders, trampling footmen, adding to the chaos. King Mern IX died in the flames, along with his sons and heirs, ending House Gardner in fire. King Loren of the Rock survived only by fleeing early, abandoning his army, and even then, he barely escaped with his life. The field burned for days afterward, the earth itself scorched black, and for years nothing would grow there. After that day, the other kingdoms of Westeros understood that they could not defeat the Targaryens in open battle. Some bent the knee immediately upon hearing the news. Others tried to resist through other means: guerrilla warfare, castle defense, assassination attempts, but none dared face the dragons in the field again. The age of dragons had come to Westeros, and the age of castles and armies had ended. 3 dragons had defeated 55,000 men in minutes, and the world would never be the same. Harrenhal was the largest castle in the 7 Kingdoms, a monument to hubris built by King Harren the Black over 40 years, using the forced labor of thousands. Its towers were so tall they seemed to touch the clouds, rising impossibly high above the shores of the God's Eye. Its walls were so thick that Harren boasted no force could ever breach them, 30 feet thick in places, built to withstand any siege engine, any battering ram, any army that might dare approach. The castle had 5 massive towers, each one larger than most castles' keeps, and it could house thousands of soldiers comfortably. Harren had built it to be impregnable, to be eternal, to be his legacy that would last 10,000 years. When Aegon demanded his submission after the Field of Fire, Harren retreated into his great fortress and laughed at the Targaryen king's threats. "What will your dragons do to stone?" he asked mockingly, secure behind his massive walls, with years of supplies stockpiled, with wells that could never be poisoned, with everything needed to outlast any siege. The answer came when Balerion arrived. Aegon flew to Harrenhal on the Black Dread, circled the castle once to give Harren a final chance to surrender, and, when no response came, gave Balerion the command to burn. The Black Dread's fire was so hot that it did not merely burn, it melted. Stone itself flowed like water, running down the walls in rivers of molten rock, dripping like wax from a candle. The towers, those impossibly tall towers that Harren had been so proud of, twisted and fused together, their tops melting and collapsing inward, creating the distinctive twisted appearance that still defines Harrenhal centuries later. The heat was so intense that stone didn't just crack or blacken, it liquefied, turning into a substance like volcanic glass in places, creating bizarre formations where walls had partially melted before cooling again. The wooden structures inside, the floors, the roof beams, the furniture, all ignited simultaneously, creating a firestorm inside the castle that consumed everything organic. Harren and all his sons perished in the fires, along with everyone else who had sheltered within those supposedly impregnable walls. Some died from the heat before the flames even touched them, their lungs seared by air so hot it was like breathing fire. Others were trapped when floors collapsed, dropping them into infernos below. The castle remained standing after a fashion, but it was forever ruined, forever twisted, its once proud towers now looking like melted candles, frozen in their moment, own of destruction. Even 300 years later, men still call it Harrenhal, and they say its halls are cursed, haunted by the ghosts of those who burned, by the screams that echoed through those passages as stone itself ran like water. Aegon made his point. There was no fortress in Westeros that could protect against dragons. Walls meant nothing. Numbers meant nothing. Only dragons mattered now. The conquest of Westeros was not accomplished by battle alone. Aegon was wise enough to offer terms to those who would surrender. After the Field of Fire and Harrenhal, many lords bent the knee immediately, recognizing that resistance was futile. The North, vast and difficult to conquer even without dragons, was brought into the fold when Torrhen Stark, the king in the North, marched his army south. But then, upon seeing Aegon's dragons and hearing of the Field of Fire, chose to kneel rather than watch his people burn. The veil was secured when the young King Rhaenyra Arryn was taken for a ride on Vhagar by Queen Visenya, and upon landing, the boy king eagerly announced he would bend the knee if he could ride the dragon again. The Stormlands fell after their king died in single combat with Aegon. The Reach and the Rock had already submitted after the Field of Fire. The Riverlands welcomed Aegon as liberator from the Ironborn. Only Dorne refused, and Dorne would remain unconquered throughout Aegon's lifetime and for generations after. The conquest took 2 years, but when it was done, 6 of the 7 kingdoms knelt to Aegon Targaryen, and he was crowned in Old Town by the High Septon, becoming Aegon the Frere, first of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms, Protector of the Realm. The Iron Throne was forged from the swords of his defeated enemies, melted by Balerion's flames and hammered into shape by the finest smiths in the realm. It was deliberately uncomfortable, forged with sharp edges and awkward angles, because Aegon believed that a king should never sit easy. And always, behind that throne, hung the skulls of dragons, starting with Balerions after his death, a reminder of the power that had created this unified kingdom. In the conquest of Westeros, Dorne alone refused to bend the knee, and Dorne alone found a way to kill a dragon. The Dornish understood that they could not match the Targaryens in open battle. They had learned from the Field of Fire that dragons made such battles unwinnable, that armies simply melted before dragonfire like snow in summer. Instead, they employed guerrilla tactics, striking and retreating, hiding in their deserts and mountains, refusing to meet the Targaryens in conventional warfare. When Aegon's forces invaded Dorne, they found castles abandoned, towns empty, supplies burned. The Dornish would attack supply lines, ambush small units, and disappear into the desert before dragons could respond. It was a frustrating, costly campaign that dragged on for years. Rhaenys, frustrated with the Dornish resistance, flew increasingly aggressive missions deep into Dorne. On one such mission, she flew Meraxes to the castle of Hellholt, a modest keep in the deep desert. She found it seemingly abandoned, the gates open, no defenders visible. But as she circled overhead, considering whether to burn it regardless, a scorpion bolt, a massive projectile fired from a giant ballista, shot up from a hidden position in the castle. The bolt was iron as long as a man fired with enough force to pierce armor. It struck Meraxes in the eye, the one vulnerable point on a dragon's head where scales are thinnest. The bolt pierced through the eye and into the dragon's brain, killing Meraxes instantly. The great silver-blue dragon fell from the sky like a stone, her wings folding, her body going limp. She crashed into the castle with such force that part of the structure collapsed beneath her massive weight, towers falling, walls cracking. Rhaenys was lost in the fall. Her body never recovered. Some say she died in the initial impact, others that she survived briefly but was buried in the rubble, others that the Dornish took her alive and she died later from her wounds. The truth died with those who witnessed it. Aegon lost both his sister-wife and one of his 3 dragons in a single moment, and the grief drove him to burn every Dornish castle he could find in revenge. But the conquest of Dorne would remain forever incomplete, and Meraxes became the first of Aegon's dragons to die, proving that dragons, for all their terrible power, were not immortal gods, but mortal creatures that could be killed by cunning and courage and a well-placed strike. After the conquest was complete, and the 7 kingdoms were united under Targaryen rule, Aegon's sons grew and were given dragons of their own. Aenys, the elder son born to Rhaenys before her death, was given a young dragon with scales of shining silver that he named Quicksilver. The dragon matched Aenys' own gentle nature, swift and graceful, beautiful to behold, but not particularly large or fearsome. Quicksilver's scales gleamed like polished silver in sunlight, and his eyes were a pale blue, giving him an almost ethereal appearance. He was smaller than the conquest dragons, never destined to reach their massive size, but he was fast, perhaps the fastest dragon of his generation. Quicksilver grew as Aenys grew, bonding with him from hatchling stage, the 2 of them learning together. By the time Aenys became king after Aegon's death, Quicksilver was large enough to carry him comfortably through the skies, though still young and relatively small by dragon standards. Aenys would fly on Quicksilver to visit various parts of the realm, using the dragon to move quickly between regions, to show the royal presence, to remind the lords that House Targaryen still had dragons. But Quicksilver would never reach the massive size of Balerion or even Vhagar, because Quicksilver's life was cut tragically short. The dragon was young, barely more than a juvenile by dragon standards, still growing, still learning his strength, when he and Aenys' son Aegon, also called Aegon, would face a terrible fate at the battle beneath the god's eye. Quicksilver represented what might have been, a beautiful dragon who never reached his full potential, cut down in youth by forces larger and older than himself. Maegor, Aegon the Conqueror's younger son by Visenya, was everything his half-brother Aenys was not: strong, cruel, ambitious and ruthless, a warrior who gloried in violence and showed no mercy to his enemies. When Maegor claimed Balerion as his own mount after his mother Visenya died, it was both a symbolic and practical move. The Black Dread was old by then, over a century old, his scales scarred from a lifetime of battles, his movements slower than in his youth. But he was still the largest and most powerful dragon alive, still a creature of terrible majesty. The bond between Maegor and Balerion seemed fitting. Both were terrible forces of destruction, feared more than loved, respected for power rather than nobility. When Aenys died, and Maegor usurped the throne from Aenys' son Aegon, the young prince refused to surrender his birthright. Aegon had right on his side. He was the eldest son of the previous king, the clear heir by all laws of succession. But Maegor had power, and in the end, power trumped right. Aegon, young and brave and perhaps foolish, flew north on Quicksilver to confront his uncle, gathering what forces he could, determined to claim his throne by force since it would not be given willingly. They met in the skies above the God's Eye, a great lake in the Riverlands, the same waters where Harren's sons had once ruled before Harrenhal's burning. What followed was the first true aerial combat between dragons in Westerosi history, a battle that would become legend and set the template for all dragon battles to come. The battle beneath the God's Eye became legend within moments of its conclusion, spoken of in hushed tones for generations, a cautionary tale about the cost of dragon warfare. Young Aegon and Quicksilver circled and dove, trying to use speed and maneuverability against Balerion's massive bulk. For a time, they succeeded in avoiding the Black Dread's attacks, darting in and out like a silver dragonfly around a great predator. Quicksilver was faster, more agile, able to turn sharply where Balerion needed wide arcs. Aegon tried to use these advantages, attempting to attack Balerion from unexpected angles, to breathe fire at Balerion's wings or neck, to wear down the older dragon. And, for a brief time, it seemed the strategy might work. Quicksilver managed to score Balerion's flank with fire, leaving a scorched mark on the black scales. But Balerion had centuries of experience, and Maegor was a warrior without mercy. The Black Dread had fought in the conquest, had burned armies, had killed enemies by the thousands. One young dragon, no matter how fast, was nothing to him. When Balerion finally caught Quicksilver, the end came quickly and brutally. Balerion's massive jaws closed around the smaller dragon's neck with crushing force, teeth designed to pierce dragon scale, punching through Quicksilver's beautiful silver armor. Quicksilver's screams echoed across the lake, a sound of pure agony that those on the ground would never forget. A dragon's death cry that seemed to echo in their nightmares for years after. Balerion shook his head like a dog with a rabbit, and Quicksilver's body broke apart, bones snapping, scales tearing, blood spraying across the sky in a red mist. The Black Dread released the broken corpse, and both dragon and rider fell from the sky, trailing blood and silver scales that caught the sunlight as they tumbled toward the earth. Aegon's body was found shattered on the ground, armor crumpled, bones broken, his young face frozen in an expression of shock and terror. Quicksilver's corpse lay broken beside him, the beautiful silver dragon reduced to a twisted ruin of scales and bone. The dragon, who had been as beautiful and gentle as his rider, perished before he could reach his full potential, and the throne of Westeros passed fully into Maegor's bloody hands, beginning a reign of terror that would scar the realm for years to come. Balerion lived through the reigns of multiple kings, a constant presence in the history of House Targaryen, a living connection to the days of Valyria and the conquest. After Maegor's mysterious death, found dead on the Iron Throne with no wounds but blood seeping from his mouth and eyes, Jaehaerys the Conciliator became king at the age of 14, and he too rode Balerion for a time. But by then, the Black Dread was more than 150 years old, ancient even by dragon standards. His scales, once gleaming black, had dulled somewhat, scarred by countless battles. His movements were slower, his flights shorter, and there were days when he seemed content to simply sleep in the dragon pit, breathing slowly, his great chest rising and falling like a mountain with its own weather. Jaehaerys, young and perceptive, recognized that Balerion's days of active service were coming to an end, and he eventually chose to ride Vermithor instead, allowing Balerion to rest. The Black Dread's last flight was with King Viserys the many years later, who rode him just once before realizing the dragon was too old and tired for regular riding. Viserys described it later as like riding a mountain that grudgingly agreed to move. Balerion flew, but slowly, and upon landing, seemed grateful to be done. After that, Balerion spent his final years in the dragon pit of King's Landing, massive and ancient, sleeping more than waking, tended by dragon keepers who brought him food and kept his lair clean. When he finally died in 94 AC, at the age of around 200 years, it marked the end of an era. His skull was so large that a man on horseback could ride through the jaws without the rider's head touching the upper jaw, a testament to the incredible size he had reached. The Targaryens kept his skull in the throne room of the Red Keep as a reminder of their power and history, placing it among the skulls of other dead dragons, creating a gallery of dragon bones that dominated the Great Hall. The Black Dread, the dragon who had been born in Valyria and died in King's Landing, who had conquered a continent and ended a way of life, became a monument in death as he had been a force in life. No dragon before or after would match Balerion's size or his legend, and when he died, something of the old Valyrian magic died with him. When Jaehaerys took the throne and began his long, peaceful reign that would last 55 years, he needed a dragon that matched his own character. Powerful but not terrifying, strong but not cruel, impressive but not overwhelming. He found that dragon in Vermithor, a great bronze creature who came to be called the Bronze Fury. Vermithor was not quite as large as Balerion, but he was still immense by any standard, and his bronze scales caught the sunlight in a way that made him seem to glow like molten metal, like a living statue cast in bronze and given the gift of flight. His eyes were amber, warm, and intelligent, and his temperament matched Jaehaerys' own wisdom and patience. Where Balerion had been a weapon of conquest, feared and unstoppable, Vermithor became a symbol of stability and strength, a dragon who represented continuity rather than change. Jaehaerys rode him for decades, visiting every corner of the realm during his long reign, using Vermithor's presence to reinforce royal authority without needing to resort to violence. The sight of the Bronze Fury in the skies became synonymous with the king's presence, and lords learned to prepare for royal visits when they saw bronze wings circling overhead. Vermithor lived on Dragonstone when not needed, roosting in the volcanic caves where dragons had made their homes since the Targaryens first came to Westeros. The caves were warm, heated by volcanic vents, and the darkness suited dragons who had evolved in similar environments in Valyria. Even after Jaehaerys' death, Vermithor remained, growing older and larger with each passing year, his bronze scales darkening slightly with age but losing none of their luster. He would not take another rider for decades, waiting in the caves, hunting fish and seals along the rocky coastline, a dormant power waiting to be awakened. When the dance of the dragons came and the realm tore itself apart, Vermithor would be called to war once more, and the Bronze Fury would prove that age had not diminished his power or his fire. Queen Alysanne, Jaehaerys' sister wife and partner in rule, rode a dragon as beautiful as she was beloved. Silverwing, a dragon with pale silver scales that gleamed like the moon, and wings that caught the light like silk stretched over delicate bones. Silverwing was graceful in flight, elegant in form and gentle in temperament for a dragon, rarely aggressive unless directly threatened. Her eyes were a soft blue-gray, unusual for a dragon, giving her an almost kind appearance that made her less frightening to those who saw her. Alysanne and Silverwing traveled together throughout the realm, with the queen using her dragon to visit even the most remote regions of the kingdom. The north, beyond the wall briefly, the mountain valleys of the Vale, the isolated islands off the coast. The small folk who might never have seen a queen in their lifetimes came to love both Alysanne and her silver dragon, and songs were written about the queen in the east and the queen in the north, celebrating her visits and her compassion. Silverwing seemed to understand her rider's compassionate nature, and stories tell of the dragon being unusually calm around people, landing gently, moving carefully to avoid stepping on anyone, never threatening unless threatened first. Children would sometimes approach when Silverwing landed, and the dragon would lower her head, allowing them to see her up close, though the dragon keepers always maintained a careful distance. After Alysanne's death, Silverwing, like Vermithor, remained on Dragonstone, choosing not to bond with another rider immediately. The two dragons, who had spent so many years with riders who loved each other deeply, who had flown together on countless journeys, stayed close together in the caves. They had become a bonded pair even without riders, hunting together, roosting near each other, their calls to one another echoing through the volcanic tunnels. Their story became one of the more romantic tales in dragon lore. Two dragons who chose to remain companions after their riders were gone, a loyalty that transcended death, a bond that was their own rather than imposed by humans. Dreamfire was one of the oldest dragons during the dance, a beautiful creature with pale blue scales that shifted to silver in certain lights, and silver markings along her wings and neck that gave her an ethereal, dreamlike quality. She was first ridden by Rhaena Targaryen, daughter of Ennis and sister to Jaehaerys, during the turbulent years of Maegor's reign and after. Later, after Rhaena's death, Dreamfire was claimed by Helaena Targaryen, wife of Aegon the Second, a gentle woman with prophetic dreams who loved insects and strange creatures. Dreamfire was known particularly for her clutches of eggs. She laid more dragon eggs than almost any other dragon in Targaryen history, clutch after clutch over her long lifetime, though not all of them hatched. Some whispered that the 3 eggs that eventually came to Daenerys Targaryen, the eggs that would hatch into Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, originated from Dreamfire's clutch, possibly the ones stolen by Alyssa Farman and sold in Braavos decades before Daenerys was born, though this connection remains unconfirmed speculation that no maester can prove. What is certain is that Dreamfire lived a long life, witnessing multiple generations of Targaryens, surviving changes in dynasty and power, outliving riders and seeing the realm transform. She was kept in the Dragon Pit during much of her later life, that massive structure built in King's Landing to house dragons closer to the throne. The Dragon Pit's great dome could accommodate even large dragons, and Dreamfire had her own chamber within, tended by dragon keepers who fed her and maintained her living space. When the dance of the dragons tore the realm apart, Dreamfire was still alive, ancient but still powerful, her pale scales dimmed somewhat by age and the sunless environment of the Dragon Pit, but her fire still burning hot. She would meet a tragic end in that war, not in battle against another dragon but in terror and chaos, killed by those she had never harmed. Meleys, known as the Red Queen, was one of the swiftest and most magnificent dragons of her era. a creature whose appearance was as striking as her speed. Her scales were scarlet and pink, brilliant colors that made her instantly recognizable in the skies. There was no mistaking Meleys for any other dragon, her coloring unique and beautiful. Her wings had membranes of deep rose, and when the sun shone through them, they glowed like stained glass in a sept, casting pink and red light on the ground below. She was first ridden by Alyssa Targaryen, who appreciated the dragon's speed and spirit, and later became the mount of Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, granddaughter of Jaehaerys, who was called the Queen Who Never Was after being passed over for succession despite being the eldest grandchild of the king. The Great Council of Samhain AC chose Viserys, Rhaenys' younger cousin, over her, and this rejection shaped much of her life and her role in the Dance of the Dragons. Meleys was old during the dance but still fierce and fast, capable of outflying younger dragons with her experience and tactical intelligence. She had fought before, knew the rhythms of combat, understood how to use altitude and speed to her advantage. Rhaenys and Meleys were inseparable, two queens denied their rightful places, finding purpose and pride in each other. The Red Queen was not the largest dragon of the era, but she was one of the most formidable in combat, combining speed with the wisdom that comes from age. When she flew, her scarlet scales reflected sunlight like rubies, and the sound of her wings was said to be distinctively sharp, cutting through the air like blades, a high-pitched whistle that announced her presence long before she arrived. Together, Rhaenys and Meleys represented the might of the Blacks in the dance, loyal to Rhaenyra Targaryen's claim to the throne, willing to fight and die for a cause they believed in. Caraxes was unique among dragons for his serpentine appearance. He had an unusually long neck and body, far longer in proportion than other dragons, earning him the nickname the Blood Worm. His scales were red as blood, darker than Meleys' bright scarlet, a deep crimson that in certain lights looked almost black, and his eyes were green, an unusual combination that made him distinctive. His temperament matched his sinister appearance. Caraxes was known for his disturbing battle cry, a shriek unlike the roars of other dragons, higher pitched and more unsettling, a sound that unnerved even experienced warriors and made other dragons uncomfortable. He was first ridden by Prince Aemon Targaryen, son of Jaehaerys and a skilled warrior, and later by Prince Daemon Targaryen, the rogue prince, younger brother to King Viserys I. Daemon and Caraxes were perfectly matched. Both were dangerous, both were unpredictable. Both were warriors who lived for battle and disdained peace. Caraxes had been wounded in an earlier conflict, a battle against Myrish pirates who had been raiding the Stepstones, leaving him with scars along his belly and possibly explaining some of his aggressive nature and unusual vocalization. He was fierce in battle, attacking with a savage intensity that made him terrifying, despite not being among the largest dragons of his era. The Bloodworm's long neck gave him advantages in aerial combat, allowing him to strike from unexpected angles, to twist and coil in ways other dragons couldn't match, to bring his jaws to bear on an opponent's vulnerable spots with surprising reach. When Daemon flew him into battle, they were a sight of nightmare beauty. A red serpent cutting through clouds, carrying a silver-haired warrior who feared nothing and welcomed death like an old friend. A combination of man and dragon that embodied the savage glory of House Targaryen at its most dangerous. The Dragon Pit of King's Landing was constructed during the reign of King Jaehaerys I, a massive structure designed to house dragons within the capital city itself, bringing them closer to the center of power. The building was enormous, its great dome visible from miles away, large enough inside to accommodate multiple full-grown dragons simultaneously. The dome was supported by massive pillars, and the interior was divided into several large chambers where dragons could be kept separated or together as needed. The construction took years and required innovative architecture, as no one had built a structure specifically to house multiple dragons before. The pit was built on a hill called Rhaenys's Hill, named for Aegon's sister queen, overlooking the city. The doors were bronze, reinforced and massive, able to withstand a dragon's attempts to break through if necessary. Inside, the dragon keepers maintained the facility, feeding the dragons, cleaning their chambers, and managing their care. But the dragon pit had unintended consequences. Dragons kept there did not grow as large as dragons raised wild on Dragonstone. The confinement, the lack of hunting, the regular feeding schedule, all of these factors seemed to stunt their growth. Dragons need space, need freedom, need to hunt and fly great distances to reach their full size. The dragon pit, for all its grandeur, was still a cage, and dragons in cages do not thrive. Over generations, this would contribute to the decline of Targaryen dragons, as more and more were kept in the pit rather than on Dragonstone. The maesters noted the decline but did not fully understand its cause, and by the time the pattern was clear, it was too late to reverse. The dragon pit would eventually be destroyed during the Dance of the Dragons, stormed by a mob and burned. But even before that, it represented a fundamental misunderstanding of what dragons need to flourish. The Dance of the Dragons was a civil war that tore House Targaryen apart and nearly drove dragons to extinction, a conflict that began with a succession crisis and ended with the death of most dragons in Westeros. When King Viserys V died in 129 AC, he left behind a complicated legacy. He had named his daughter Rhaenyra as his heir years before, making the Lords of the Realm swear oaths to support her claim. But he also had sons by his second wife, Alicent Hightower, and many believed that Aegon, the eldest son, should inherit according to traditional Westerosi succession law that favored male heirs. The realm split between those who supported Rhaenyra, called the Blacks after her black and red heraldry, and those who supported Aegon II, called the Greens after Alicent's green dress at a crucial feast. Both sides had dragons, both sides had armies, and both sides believed completely in the righteousness of their cause. What followed was the most destructive war in Westerosi history, a conflict where dragons fought dragons, where cities burned, where thousands died, and where the Targaryen dynasty was permanently weakened. The dance would last for years, consuming lords and small folk alike, and when it finally ended, the Age of Dragons would effectively be over. Nearly every dragon that fought in the dance would die, and those that survived would be so traumatized or weakened that they could not sustain the species. The war proved that dragons, for all their power, could not save House Targaryen from itself, that the greatest threat to the Targaryens was not external enemies, but their own ambition and pride. Syrax was the personal mount of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, named after a goddess of Old Valyria associated with love and fertility. Her scales were yellow and gold, bright and beautiful like her rider in youth, gleaming in the sunlight like polished brass. Syrax was raised in the dragon pit of King's Landing, rather than wild on Dragonstone, pampered and well-fed on a regular schedule, never having to hunt for her own food or defend her territory from other dragons. While she grew to a respectable size, She never developed the same battle hardness as dragons raised wild on Dragonstone, never learned the instincts that come from hunting and fighting for survival. She was accustomed to comfort, to regular feeding schedules, to the presence of humans who served her rather than threatened her. This upbringing would prove to be both her strength and her weakness. She was easier to control and more reliable in peaceful times, bonded closely to Rhaenyra from a young age, but less adapted to the chaos and violence of war. Rhaenyra rode her regularly throughout King's Landing during her youth, and the sight of the golden dragon became synonymous with the princess, a symbol of her status and power. When Rhaenyra was named heir to the throne by her father Viserys, Syrax became a symbol of her claim, a living representation of Targaryen power supporting her right to rule. Rhaenyra loved Syrax deeply, perhaps too deeply, treating the dragon more like a companion than a weapon. But Syrax had never fought in true battle, never hunted wild prey, never known hardship or hunger or real danger. She was a dragon of peacetime, beautiful and impressive, but untested. When war came and Rhaenyra needed Syrax to be a weapon of war, the dragon's lack of experience would matter greatly, and the bond between rider and dragon would be tested in ways neither had prepared for. The Dance of the Dragons began with a tragedy in the stormy skies above Storm's End, a moment that transformed a tense political situation into open war. Young Lucerys Valerian, second son of Rhaenyra, was barely 14 years old when he flew on his dragon Arax to Storm's End to deliver his mother's message to Lord Boros Baratheon, seeking the Stormlands' support for Rhaenyra's claim. It was supposed to be a simple diplomatic mission, the kind that princes had performed countless times before. Arax was young, barely large enough to carry a rider comfortably, with pale gray scales and white wing membranes that made him look almost ghostly against storm clouds. The dragon was gentle-natured, not aggressive, matching Lucerys' own youth and relative innocence. When Lucerys arrived at Storm's End, he found that Prince Aemond Targaryen, riding the ancient Vhagar, had already arrived on a similar mission for Aegon II. The meeting in Lord Boros' hall was tense, with Aemond demanding that Lucerys pay a debt. Years before, during a childhood fight, Lucerys had slashed Aemond's eye out with a knife, and Aemond had never forgotten or forgiven. Lord Boros refused to allow bloodshed under his roof, invoking guest right, and Lucerys was allowed to leave. But as he flew away on Arax through the gathering storm, Aemond pursued on Vhagar, following him into the darkening sky. What began as intimidation, Aemond trying to frighten the boy, turned to horror when control was lost. Vhagar, massive and ancient, had hunted prey for over a century and a half, and her instincts were deeply ingrained. When the small dragon, Arax, frightened and desperate as the storm worsened, and Vhagar kept closing in despite Lucerys' attempts to flee, breathed fire at Vhagar in defense. A small gout of flame that did no real damage, but triggered something primal. The ancient dragon's predatory instincts awakened fully. Despite Aemond's commands to stop, despite his pulling on the reins and shouting in High Valyrian for Vhagar to obey, the ancient she-dragon attacked. Her jaws, large enough to swallow a horse whole, closed around Arax in mid-flight with devastating force. The sound was terrible. Bones cracking, scales tearing. The young dragon's scream of agony cut short as Vhagar's teeth pierced his body. Arax was torn apart, his wings ripped from his body, his neck broken, his life ended in seconds. Lucerys, still strapped to his saddle, fell with the pieces of his dragon, tumbling through the storm toward the dark waters below. His body was never recovered. lost somewhere in Shipbreaker Bay, and Eryx's broken wings and scales scattered on the water. This death, whether intended by Aemond or not, became the spark that ignited full war between the Blacks and the Greens. Rhaenyra's grief transformed into rage, and any hope of peaceful resolution died with her son in that storm. The realm would bleed for years because a boy and his young dragon were devoured by an ancient beast who remembered the taste of prey, and thousands would die because one moment of lost control in a storm above Storm's End escalated a succession dispute into a war that would consume everything. Vermax was the dragon of Jacaerys Valerian, Rhaenyra's eldest son and heir, a responsibility he took seriously despite his youth. The dragon was deep green with pale orange wings, a striking combination that made him easily identifiable in flight. Vermax's scales had an almost emerald quality in bright sunlight, and his eyes were orange-gold, bright and alert. He was young, but growing steadily, and Jacaerys had ridden him since the dragon hatched, creating a strong bond between them built on trust and familiarity. During the dance, Jacaerys flew on Vermax on crucial diplomatic missions for his mother's cause, traveling north to treat with Lord Cregan Stark at Winterfell, a journey that secured the North's support through the Pact of Ice and Fire, and to the Vale, where his presence on Dragonback helped secure that kingdom's loyalty as well. Jacaerys was proving himself a capable diplomat and leader, using Vermax's presence to add weight to his negotiations without needing to resort to threats. The sight of a prince on Dragonback reminded lords that the Targaryens still commanded power, that supporting Rhaenyra meant supporting a side with dragons. But Vermax's fate was sealed in a naval battle, a rare and dangerous situation for dragons who typically dominated land battles, but were more vulnerable over open water. During a fight against enemy ships in the Gullet, a narrow strait where Aegon II's fleet attempted to blockade supplies to Dragonstone, Jacaerys led an attack from the air. Vermax dove repeatedly, breathing fire on the ships below, setting sails ablaze and forcing sailors to abandon their vessels. But the sailors fought back with crossbows and scorpions, firing volley after volley into the sky. Eventually, multiple bolts struck Vermax, in his wing, his neck, his belly. None were immediately fatal, but the accumulation of wounds weakened the dragon. When a bolt pierced Vermax's wing membrane, tearing a large hole, the dragon lost control of his flight and spiraled down toward the water. He crashed into the sea with tremendous force, sending up a spray of water, and began to sink immediately. Jacaerys, weighted down by his armor as all warriors were, could not escape the sinking dragon or swim to safety in the cold, deep waters. Both rider and mount were lost to the cold depths, their bodies never recovered. The Blacks had lost not only a dragon but Rhaenyra's heir, the young man who was supposed to inherit the throne after her, another step in the cascading tragedy that consumed both sides in the dance. Vermax's death proved that dragons, despite their fearsome reputation, had vulnerabilities, and that clever tactics and sufficient firepower could bring even a dragon down. Tyrax's was the dragon of Prince Joffrey Valerian, Rhaenyra's third son, younger than both Jacaerys and Lucerys. Tyrax's was small, younger even than Vermax and Arax, barely large enough to carry a rider when the dance began. His scales were a muddy green-brown color, not as vibrant as his brother's dragons, and his temperament was nervous, easily startled. Joffrey was even younger than Lucerys, only about 12 years old when the war started, and his bond with Tyraxes was still developing, not yet the deep connection that older riders achieved with their dragons. During the dance, Joffrey and Tyraxes were kept mostly at Dragonstone, considered too young to participate in actual combat. But when news reached Dragonstone of the storming of the Dragon Pit in King's Landing, when a mob of small folk, driven mad by hunger and fear and hatred of dragons, stormed the great dome where the dragons were kept, Joffrey could not sit idle. He knew his mother, Rhaenyra, was in King's Landing, knew that dragons were being killed, and in a moment of youthful bravery and foolishness, he decided to fly to the city to help. He mounted Tyraxes and flew toward King's Landing, but the young dragon was not ready for such a journey, and the chaos and smoke rising from the burning city frightened the already nervous creature. As they approached the dragon pit, Tyraxes panicked, bucking and twisting in the air, trying to flee from the terrifying sounds and smells below. Joffrey, still learning to ride, could not maintain his seat. He fell from the dragon's back, tumbling through the air, and crashed to his death in the streets below, his body broken by the fall. Tyraxes, freed from his rider's weight and direction, flew in circles above the city before finally fleeing back to Dragonstone, traumatized and riderless. The young dragon would not accept another rider and died not long after, seemingly from grief or trauma, refusing food until he wasted away. Tyraxes represented the cost of the dance on the young and innocent, a dragon and rider who were never ready for war, but were consumed by it nonetheless. Moondancer was a young dragon, barely large enough to ride, bonded with Lady Baela Targaryen, daughter of Prince Daemon. Her scales were pale green with pearl-white markings that gave her an ethereal appearance, as if she were made of moonlight given form. Her eyes were silver, unusual and beautiful, and her build was slender and delicate, built for speed rather than strength. Despite her small size, she was one of the smallest dragons to be ridden in the dance. Moondancer was swift and brave, qualities she shared with her rider who had inherited her father's warrior spirit. When King's Landing fell to Aegon II's forces after Rhaenyra was forced to flee, Baela remained in the city as a prisoner, held in the Red Keep under guard. But when she learned that Aegon II, grievously wounded and barely able to move, was attempting to escape the city on his dragon Sunfire to avoid capture by approaching forces, Baela could not let him go unpunished. In a moment of desperate courage, she stole into the dragon pit, evaded the guards, mounted Moondancer despite the dragon's small size and her own lack of armor, and pursued the king. What followed was a brutal aerial combat that should have been impossibly one-sided. Sunfire was far larger, far more experienced, and had fought in multiple battles despite his wounds. But Moondancer was fast, incredibly fast, darting around Sunfire like a dragonfly around a hawk, attacking from unexpected angles, breathing fire at the larger dragon's wounds. Baela showed remarkable skill and courage, using her dragon's speed and agility to avoid Sunfire's attacks while landing strikes of her own. For a time, it seemed as if speed and courage might triumph over size and experience. But in the end, Sunfire's size and Aegon's desperation won out. Sunfire eventually caught Moondancer, his massive claws closing around the smaller dragon's body, his jaws finding purchase on her neck. The two dragons fell together in a tangle of wings and fire, crashing into the ground with terrible force. Both dragons were grievously wounded in the fall, bones broken, wings torn. Moondancer died from her injuries within minutes, bleeding out on the ground, her pearl-white scales stained red. Baela survived, but was badly hurt, her legs broken in the fall, burns across her body. She would recover, scarred but alive, while Sunfire, though victorious, was left even more broken than before, barely able to move. The tiny dragon's courage became legendary. A small creature who had dared to fight one of the greatest dragons of the age because her rider demanded it, proving that size was not everything, that courage and love could drive even the smallest to challenge giants. Stormcloud was a very young dragon, barely more than a hatchling, bonded to Prince Aegon, the eldest son of King Aegon II. The boy was only about 2 years old when the dance began, far too young to ride, but his father had already arranged for him to bond with the dragon as all Targaryen children were. Stormcloud was tiny, with dark gray scales that seemed almost blue in certain lights, named for his color. As the war progressed, and King's Landing became increasingly dangerous, a decision was made to evacuate the young prince and his siblings to safety. Young Aegon was placed on Stormcloud despite the dragon's small size, accompanied by caretakers, and they fled the city. But Stormcloud was too young for such a long flight, too small to carry even a child comfortably for any distance. During the flight, the dragon was attacked by arrows from below. Small folk or soldiers who saw any dragon as an enemy, too consumed by war hatred to care that this was a child on a baby dragon. Several arrows struck Stormcloud, wounding the young dragon, and though none were fatal, the pain and fear caused Stormcloud to crash land on Dragonstone. The landing was rough, injuring both dragon and rider further. Young Aegon survived the crash, but Stormcloud did not. The young dragon died from his wounds within hours of landing, making him one of the youngest dragons to die in the dance. The boy prince would survive, but grew up without his dragon, traumatized by the experience. Stormcloud's death represented the indiscriminate nature of the war, how even the youngest and most innocent, dragon and human alike, were consumed by the conflict. A dragon barely large enough to fly, carrying a child barely old enough to walk, both caught up in a war neither understood, and the dragon paid with his life for the sins of his elders. Vhagar, the last of Aegon's 3 conquest dragons, lived through nearly 2 centuries, growing to become almost as large as Balerion himself by the time of the Dance of the Dragons. By then, she was the largest living dragon in the world, a mountain of bronze-green scales scarred by a lifetime of battles, her hide so thick that most weapons simply bounced off. She had outlived her original rider Visenya by more than a century, and had bonded with multiple riders across generations. After Visenya came Balon the Brave, then Lyanna Velaryon, and finally Prince Aemond Targaryen during the dance. Each rider added to her experience, each battle added to her scars, and by the time Aemond claimed her, Vhagar was ancient, enormous, and terrifying beyond measure. During the dance, she was ridden by Prince Aemond, called Aemond One-Eye after losing his eye in childhood, and together they became one of the most formidable forces in the war. Vhagar's size meant her flames could engulf entire armies, burning hundreds of men in seconds, turning castle courtyards into furnaces. Her physical presence was overwhelming. When she landed, the ground shook from her weight, buildings trembled, and soldiers fled in terror, just from seeing her shadow cross the sun. The sound of her wings was like thunder rolling across the land, and her roar could be heard for miles, a deep bellow that made the earth itself seem to vibrate. But size came with limitations. Vhagar was slower than the younger dragons, less agile in the air, her turns wide and ponderous where smaller dragons could pivot sharply. She relied on overwhelming power rather than speed, on experience rather than agility. Her age and countless battles meant she carried wounds and weariness that younger dragons did not. old injuries that had healed but left weak spots, joints that were stiffer than they once were, reflexes that were a fraction slower than in her youth. Still, when Vhagar roared, even other dragons felt the primal instinct to flee, recognizing a predator older and more powerful than themselves. She had burned armies at the field of fire, had conquered kingdoms, had outlived generations of Targaryens, and she remembered. Dragons have long memories, and Vhagar's memory stretched back to Valyria itself, to a world before Westeros knew dragons, to the glory days of the conquest when she and her siblings had been unstoppable. Sunfire the Golden was considered the most beautiful dragon that ever lived, a creature whose appearance inspired poetry and songs across the realm. His scales were gold and pink, shimmering in the sunlight like precious metals heated to glowing, and his wings had rose-gold membranes that caught light like stained glass windows, casting colored shadows on the ground when he flew overhead. In bright sunlight, Sunfire seemed to glow from within, as if made of living flame shaped into dragon form. His eyes were molten gold, bright and intelligent, and his teeth, when he opened his jaws, gleamed white as snow. He was ridden by King Aegon II during the dance, and the bond between them was unusually strong, deeper than most dragon rider pairs. Aegon loved Sunfire with an intensity that bordered on obsession, and Sunfire returned that devotion with absolute loyalty. The dragon was not the largest. He was of middling size, smaller than Vhagar or Vermithor or Meleys. Nor was he the fiercest in temperament, but his beauty was unmatched and his loyalty absolute. During the dance, Sunfire was grievously wounded multiple times in different battles, suffering injuries that would have killed lesser dragons. At the Battle of Rook's Rest, fighting against Meleys and Princess Rhaenys, Sunfire suffered broken wings, torn wing membranes, deep gashes along his body, and burns from Meleys' fire. He fell from the sky and was thought dead, but somehow he survived, crawling away from the battlefield, dragging himself through forests and fields when he could not fly. His golden scales were stained with blood and dirt. His wings hung broken and useless, and he could barely move. Yet he survived, crawling and limping, refusing to die while his rider lived. The sight of the once magnificent golden dragon dragging himself along the ground, scarred and broken but still alive, became a tragic symbol of the war's cost, a beautiful thing reduced to suffering. Even in his ruined state, Sunfire retained his bond with Aegon and when Aegon was injured and crippled in the same battle, dragon and rider suffered together, two broken things that refused to surrender to death. Sunfire's story did not end with his initial wounding. Indeed, the Golden Dragon's survival became one of the most remarkable tales of the dance. After crawling away from Rook's Rest, Sunfire somehow made his way to Dragonstone, though how a dragon with broken wings accomplished such a journey remains a mystery. Some say he crawled the entire way, mile after painful mile. Others suggest his wings partially healed enough for short, agonizing flights. Regardless, he reached Dragonstone and hid there, recovering slowly, hunting when he could, his body gradually healing though he would never be whole again. When Aegon II eventually reclaimed Dragonstone and was reunited with his dragon, the king wept to see Sunfire alive, and the dragon, despite his terrible injuries, managed to roar in recognition. Sunfire's final act was to devour Rhaenyra Targaryen on Aegon's command, the golden dragon's jaws closing around the Black Queen, ending her life in dragonfire and teeth, a gruesome end for a queen, killed by a broken but still loyal dragon acting at his equally broken rider's command. Soon after this final service to his rider, Sunfire finally succumbed to his accumulated wounds. The infections from his injuries, the strain of movement with broken bones, the exhaustion of surviving so long with such damage. All of it caught up with him at last. He died quietly one night, his golden scales dimmed but never tarnished, his beauty intact even in death. Aegon II, already broken in body and spirit, was devastated by his dragon's death. Sunfire had been more than a mount to him. The dragon had been companion, protector, and perhaps the only living thing that Aegon truly loved. The Golden Dragon's death marked the beginning of the end for Aegon II himself, who would not survive much longer without his beautiful, loyal beast. Tessarion, called the Blue Queen, was ridden by Prince Daeron Targaryen, youngest son of King Viserys III and Queen Alicent, and brother to Aegon, Second, and Aemond. Her scales were cobalt blue, shimmering with darker blue patterns that shifted like water when she moved, and her wings had highlights of copper that flashed brilliantly when she flew, creating a stunning visual effect. Tessarion was younger than many of the dragons in the dance, but proved herself fierce and capable in battle despite her relative youth. She was perhaps the most elegant of the dance dragons after Sunfire, her movements graceful, her appearance striking. Daeron, unlike his brothers, was a capable military commander and a decent person. Where Aegon II was cruel and Aemond was ruthless, Daeron was honorable and brave, earning the nickname Daeron the Daring for his courage. He and Tessarion won several victories for the Greens in the Reach, fighting against forces loyal to Rhaenyra, and the Blue Queen was beloved by soldiers who fought alongside her. She was neither cruel nor unnecessarily destructive. Daeron used her tactically, burning enemy formations and fortifications, but avoiding civilian casualties when possible. In battle, she was precise and effective, her blue flames burning with an intensity that matched any dragon despite her youth. The copper highlights on her wings made her easily identifiable from a distance, and the sight of the Blue Queen in the sky became a rallying point for Aegon II's forces in the south. Tessarion's death came at the Second Battle of Tumbleton, a chaotic engagement where betrayals and dragon battles overlapped in confusion and carnage. There, she fought against the dragon Sea Smoke in a battle that was as much about determination as skill. The battle between Tessarion and Sea Smoke at the Second Battle of Tumbleton was brutal and prolonged. Neither dragon willing to yield, both fighting past the point of reason. They met in the sky above the burning town, two dragons of similar age and size, blue scales against silver gray, copper wings against pale membranes. They tore at each other with claws and teeth, breathing fire at close range, circling and diving and crashing together repeatedly. The fight lasted long past the point where both were mortally wounded. Tessarion had deep gashes along her neck and belly, her wings torn, her scales broken in places. Sea Smoke was equally damaged, one wing partially shredded, his side ripped open, his movements becoming sluggish from blood loss. Yet they continued fighting, driven by instinct and the commands of their riders, until finally both dragons crashed to the ground together, too weak to fly, too wounded to continue. Even on the ground, they fought, crawling toward each other, biting and clawing with the last of their strength. When the battle finally ended, both dragons lay dead among the ruins of Tumbleton, their blood mixing in the ash and mud, their bodies tangled together. The Blue Queen had fought bravely for her rider and her cause, and her death marked another step toward the extinction of dragons. Prince Daeron died in the same battle, killed by arrows, and with him died the last hope that the Green cause might produce a decent king. Tessarion and Daeron together represented what might have been. An honorable prince and his beautiful dragon, both destroyed by a war that had long since lost any meaning beyond mutual destruction. Dreamfire's death came not in battle against another dragon, but in terror and chaos, killed by those she had never harmed, a tragedy that symbolized how far the dance had fallen into madness. When King's Landing fell into chaos near the end of the dance, the small folk, driven mad by hunger, fear, and shepherds, apocalyptic preaching about dragons being demons, stormed the dragon pit in a massive mob. Thousands of people, armed with little more than axes, hammers, and rage, overwhelmed the dragon keepers and broke into the great dome where 4 dragons were housed: Dreamfire, Shrykos, Morgul, and the young dragon of Jaihira. The mob had no real plan, no way to actually kill dragons, but they had numbers and fury and desperation. Dreamfire, ancient and powerful, woke to find herself surrounded by screaming humans, torches and weapons everywhere, the smell of smoke and blood filling the air. She panicked, as any creature would when cornered by a mob. She breathed fire, killing dozens, perhaps hundreds, but there were always more. The mob swarmed her, attacking from all sides, and in her panic and rage, Dreamfire began to thrash, her movements becoming wild and uncontrolled. She smashed against the walls of the dragon pit, her massive body striking the pillars that held up the great dome. The structure, weakened by fire and the chaos of battle, began to collapse. Stone rained down, the dome cracking and falling in massive chunks. Dreamfire, still trying to escape, pushed upward against the collapsing dome, and the combined force of her desperate strength and the failing structure caused a catastrophic collapse. The entire dome came down, tons of stone falling, crushing dragons and humans alike. Dreamfire died, buried under rubble, crushed by the very building that was supposed to house her safely, killed by those who should have been in awe of her. Her death was neither glorious nor meaningful. It was simply tragic, a waste of an ancient creature who had lived through generations and deserved better than to die in panic and pain, killed by a terrified mob. Shrykos and Morgul were young dragons, barely more than juveniles, who died alongside Dreamfire in the storming of the dragon pit. Shrykos had pale pink scales with white highlights, a pretty dragon who was still small, perhaps large enough to carry a rider, but not by much. Morgul was dark green, almost black in dim light, with a more aggressive temperament than his sister. Both dragons belonged to the royal family, bonded to young princes or princesses, and both had been kept in the dragon pit for safety. An ironic decision, as the dragon pit would prove to be their tomb. When the mob stormed the building, Shrykos and Morgul were in their separate chambers, and the dragon keepers tried desperately to protect them, but were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The young dragons fought back as best they could. Morgul killed many attackers with his flames and claws, his aggressive nature making him particularly dangerous even at his small size. Shrykos tried to flee, battering against the walls, seeking any exit, her screams audible across the city. But youth and panic worked against them. They did not have the experience or size of older dragons, did not know how to effectively fight against overwhelming numbers. The mob used tactics that would never work against a mature dragon. They drove cattle and sheep into the chambers to distract the dragons. They flooded certain areas, they attacked from multiple directions at once. Eventually, through sheer persistence and willingness to die in massive numbers, the mob brought both young dragons down. Shrykos was killed by repeated attacks to her eyes and throat, vulnerable spots that even young dragon scales did not fully protect. Morgul died trapped beneath fallen rubble, suffocated or crushed when part of the structure collapsed on him. The death of these young dragons was particularly tragic because they represented the future. These were the dragons who should have lived to breed, to continue the species, to become the Balerions and Vhagar's of the next generation. Instead, they died young, killed by terrified humans who saw them only as monsters, and with their deaths, the future of dragons grew darker. The battle above the God's Eye was the greatest and most terrible dragon battle in history, a duel between Caraxes and Vhagar that would become legend, spoken of with horror and awe for generations. Prince Daemon Targaryen, riding Caraxes the Bloodworm, challenged Prince Aemond and Vhagar above the same lake where Balerion had killed Quicksilver generations before. As if the God's Eye was fated to be the site of the most important dragon battles in history. The challenge was deliberate. Daemon knew Aemond was hunting him, knew that Aemond's pride would not allow him to refuse single combat, and chose the place and time carefully. The two dragons met in the sky above the dark waters, and what followed was not a brief skirmish but a prolonged savage fight that lasted hours. Caraxes, the Bloodworm, used his serpentine body and unusual agility to strike at Vhagar's neck and throat, darting in and out, using his long reach to attack from angles that other dragons could not match. Vhagar tried to use her massive bulk to crush or tear the smaller dragon apart, her strategy simple but effective. If she could catch Caraxes, if she could bring her enormous weight and strength to bear, she would win. They fought at high altitude, the dragons circling each other, each looking for an opening. Then they descended in spirals, locked together, clawing and biting. They crashed into the lake with tremendous force, the water boiling from their dying fires, steam rising in great clouds. They rose again, still fighting, water streaming from their scales. The lake's surface was churned by their impacts, and fish by the thousands were killed by the heat and concussion. Witnesses on the shore watched in terror and awe as the two greatest dragons of the age tried to kill each other. The battle continued with neither dragon giving ground, both riders shouting commands in High Valyrian, both knowing that this fight would end only in death for at least one of them. Caraxes used his speed and his unusual build to his advantage, his long neck allowing him to reach Vhagar's throat repeatedly, his teeth tearing at the bronze-green scales, seeking the vulnerable spots beneath. Vhagar's experience kept her in the fight. She had fought in more battles than Caraxes, had killed before, knew how to endure pain and keep fighting. Her claws raked Caraxes' belly, tearing deep wounds, opening gashes that bled freely. Her jaws closed on Caraxes' wing, tearing the membrane, making flight difficult. But Caraxes was relentless, driven by Daemon's iron will and his own savage nature. Finally, in a moment of perfect positioning and desperate strength, Caraxes managed to tear out Vhagar's throat with his teeth, his jaws clamping down on the great artery and ripping through scales and flesh. Blood sprayed across the sky, and Vhagar's roar turned to a gurgling scream. But even in her death throes, Vhagar's claws had opened mortal wounds in Caraxes' belly, her final strike disemboweling the bloodworm, his entrails spilling into the air. Both dragons fell from the sky together, locked in their death embrace, crashing into the lake with such force that the water boiled and great waves rolled out to the shores. Caraxes, showing incredible will even with mortal wounds, managed to crawl onto the shore before expiring, his last act one of defiance, refusing to die in the water. His body lay on the beach, the bloodworm's red scales dimmed, his long neck stretched out, his life bleeding away into the sand. Vhagar sank into the deep water and was lost, her massive body pulled down by its own weight, disappearing into the dark depths. Aemon's body was found days later, still chained to his saddle, pierced through his good eye by Dark Sister, Daemon's Valyrian steel sword. For the rogue prince had leaped from his dragon onto Vhagar during the fight, achieving the impossible, killing his nephew in single combat while their dragons killed each other. Daemon's body was never found, and many believe he died in the fall when Vhagar plunged into the lake, though some songs claim he lived and flew away to die in peace. 2 princes, 2 dragons, all lost in a battle that served only to prove how much destruction the dance had wrought, how completely the war had consumed the best and strongest of both sides. Grey Ghost was a wild dragon who lived on Dragonstone, never bonded with a rider, surviving by hunting fish and seals along the rocky coastline, living a solitary existence that most dragons would find strange. His scales were pale gray-white, almost ghostly in appearance, giving him his name and making him nearly invisible against fog or clouds. He was of middling size, large enough to be dangerous but not among the great dragons of the era. Grey Ghost was known for being extremely shy and reclusive, avoiding humans whenever possible, fleeing at the first sign of people approaching. He would hide in sea caves during the day, sleeping in the darkness, and hunt at night when fewer people were about, making him rarely seen despite his large size. His diet consisted primarily of fish caught from the sea. He would dive into the water, snatching large fish or even seals with his claws, and carry them back to his cave to eat in privacy. The dragon keepers of Dragonstone knew of him but rarely saw him, catching only glimpses of gray wings in the mist or finding the remains of his meals on remote beaches. During the dance, several dragon seeds, common-born people with enough Valyrian blood to potentially ride dragons, attempted to claim him, hoping to gain power and status by bonding with a wild dragon. But Grey Ghost fled from all of them, wanting no part of human affairs or the warfare consuming the realm. He would disappear into fog or fly far out to sea when approached, and those who pursued him too aggressively sometimes found themselves chased off by warning bursts of flame. His death came not from battle or from humans, but from another dragon, Sunfire, wounded and crawling along the coast after the Battle of Rook's Rest, ambushed Grey Ghost while the wild dragon was feeding on a dead whale that had washed ashore on a beach. The fight was savage but brief. Grey Ghost, caught by surprise while feeding, never had a chance to use his speed to escape. Sunfire, despite his terrible wounds, still had his fire and his fury, and he killed Grey Ghost quickly, then partially devoured the wild dragon's corpse, feeding on dragon flesh in an act of desperation or madness. It was a reminder that in times of war and desperation, even dragons turned on each other, that the wild dragons who wished only to be left alone were still caught in the conflict that consumed their kind, that nowhere was truly safe when the dance of the dragons was burning across the realm. Sheepstealer was another wild dragon of Dragonstone, larger and more aggressive than Grey Ghost, and far less shy about approaching human settlements. His scales were mud brown, dark and unremarkable, without the beauty of dragons like Sunfire or the striking colors of Targaryen, and he earned his name through his habit of stealing sheep from flocks along the coastline and on nearby islands. Sheep Stealer was more confrontational than Grey Ghost, sometimes attacking shepherds who tried to defend their animals, breathing fire to scatter them before grabbing sheep in his claws and flying away. The small folk of the region hated him for the livestock he took, but also feared him, knowing that a dragon who would steal sheep might eventually decide to prey on people. During the dance, many dragon seeds attempted to claim him, drawn by reports that he was large and aggressive, thinking he would make a powerful mount for war. Most were burned or driven off violently. Sheep Stealer had no interest in humans and responded to attempts to approach him with immediate aggression. Several men died trying to claim him, burned to ash or torn apart by his claws. But a young woman named Nettles succeeded, where knights and warriors failed, and she did so through patience and understanding rather than dominance. She did not try to force Sheep Stealer to submit. Instead, she began leaving dead sheep for him every morning at the same location, a small beach where he sometimes roosted. Day after day, she would bring a freshly killed sheep, leave it, and withdraw to a safe distance. For weeks, Sheep Stealer would take the sheep but show no interest in her. But gradually, over time, the dragon began to associate her presence with food, began to tolerate her being closer when he fed. Eventually, she was able to approach close enough to touch him, and then finally to climb onto his back. The bond between Nettles and Sheep Stealer became one of the more remarkable stories of the dance. A common girl with no apparent noble blood who befriended a wild dragon through patience and respect rather than magic or force. She rode him in several battles, proving herself a capable dragon rider, and Sheep Stealer fought fiercely for her. When the war turned and Nettles' life was threatened by political intrigue, accused falsely of treason by those who feared her influence, she and Sheep Stealer disappeared into the mountains of the moon, never to be seen again. Whether they lived out their days in those remote peaks, Nettles becoming a mountain witch served by a dragon, or whether they perished in the wilderness, none can say. But stories persisted for generations of a brown dragon seen in the mountains, and of a wild woman who rode him, suggesting that perhaps they found peace away from the wars of men. The cannibal was the most feared of the wild dragons, a massive beast with scales as black as coal and eyes that glowed green like burning copper, a creature of nightmare that seemed to embody everything terrifying about dragons. He earned his name through the gruesome habit of feeding on dragon eggs and young dragons, haunting the breeding caves of Dragonstone to prey on his own kind, behavior that even other dragons found disturbing. The cannibal was believed to be very old, possibly hatched before the Targaryens even came to Dragonstone, which would make him one of the oldest dragons alive during the dance, perhaps even older than Vhagar. He was larger than most dragons of his era, exceeded only by Vhagar herself, and his temperament was utterly savage, showing no fear of humans or other dragons. His black scales were scarred and pitted, suggesting a long life of fighting, and his teeth were enormous, stained dark from his diet. No one ever successfully claimed the cannibal. Every person who tried to approach him was either incinerated on sight or fled in terror before getting close enough to attempt bonding. He killed and ate several dragon seeds who attempted to claim him during the dance, their charred remains found near his lair, sometimes partially consumed. The cannibal seemed to have no interest in human affairs, no desire for a rider, existing only to hunt and kill. He would attack other dragons who came near his territory, driving them off or killing them if they did not flee quickly enough. His presence on Dragonstone was a constant source of fear for the dragon keepers, who knew that the cannibal could kill any of them at any time if he chose. After the war ended and the dragons began to die out, the cannibal simply disappeared. Some accounts say he was seen flying north across the Bay of Seals, leaving Dragonstone and Westeros behind entirely, his great black wings carrying him toward the lands of always winter. Whether he died in the wild lands beyond the Wall, succumbing finally to age or cold or lack of food, or whether he found some remote volcanic island to make his own and lived on for years or decades more, no one knows. The cannibal remains a mystery, a dark legend among dragon lore, proof that some dragons were not meant to be ridden, that some creatures exist beyond human control or understanding, wild and free and terrible until the very end. Sea Smoke's story began with Leonor Valyrian, who rode the pale, silver-gray dragon for years before his supposed death. Sea Smoke's scales were the color of sea foam, hence his name, with lighter silver highlights that made him seem almost translucent in certain lights. He was swift and agile, comfortable flying over water as his name suggested, often skimming low over waves during flight. After Leonor's apparent death, a staged assassination that was actually an escape to Essos with his lover, Sea Smoke remained riderless on Driftmark, and this created a mystery. Dragons do not typically accept new riders while their original rider lives, the bond being so strong that it persists across distance. Yet, during the dance, a common-born man named Adam of Hull managed to claim Sea Smoke, approaching the dragon on the beaches of Driftmark and somehow forming a bond. The dragon accepted him without resistance, as if recognizing something in the young man. This suggested either that Leonor had truly died despite reports otherwise, or that Adam had Valyrian blood, possibly one of Leonor's bastards, or perhaps a bastard of Corlys Valyrian himself. Regardless of the truth, Sea Smoke proved loyal to Adam and to Rhaenyra's cause. Adam became one of the dragon seeds, common people with enough Valyrian blood to ride dragons, and he fought in several battles during the dance. Sea Smoke was swift and reliable in combat, his pale scales making him difficult to track against clouds or sea spray. His death came at the Second Battle of Tumbleton, locked in mortal combat with Tessarion, two dragons of similar age and size tearing each other apart until both lay still, their blood mixing in the ruins of the town. Sea Smoke had been one of the more adaptable dragons, accepting a new rider when circumstances demanded it, proving that dragon bonds, while strong, were not absolutely unbreakable. But even adaptability could not save him from the brutal mathematics of dragon-on-dragon warfare, and he died as so many dragons of the dance died, fighting another dragon, both creatures destroying each other, both riders lost, the realm made poorer for the loss. Vermithor and Silverwing, the bonded pair who had remained together on Dragonstone after their riders died, were called back to war during the dance when the need for dragons became desperate. Both were ancient by then, Vermithor approaching 100 years old, Silverwing not far behind, but both were still immensely powerful. Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, was now the second largest living dragon after Vhagar. His bronze scales darkened with age, but his fire still burning hot. During the dance, with so many riders dead and dragons riderless, Rhaenyra called for dragon seeds to come to Dragonstone and attempt to claim the wild and riderless dragons. Among those who came were Hugh Hammer and Ulf White, both claiming Valyrian ancestry. Hugh Hammer, a blacksmith of great size and strength, managed to claim Vermithor through a combination of courage and possibly legitimate Targaryen blood. The claiming was dangerous. Vermithor killed several other aspirants before Hugh succeeded, but once bonded, the Bronze Fury accepted his new rider. Ulf White, called Ulf the Sot for his drinking, claimed Silverwing, the beautiful silver dragon accepting him more readily than Vermithor had accepted Hugh. Both dragons fought in the dance, their ancient power-turning battles, but both dragon seeds eventually betrayed Rhaenyra, switching sides to Aegon II in exchange for promises of land and titles. This betrayal marked a turning point in the war, showing that the bonds between dragons and riders, while strong, did not guarantee loyalty in human politics. Vermithor and Silverwing fought for the Greens after the betrayal, their fires burning for a cause their original riders would have opposed. Both dragons died at the Second Battle of Tumbleton, caught in the chaos when that town became a slaughterhouse. Vermithor was killed by common soldiers, overwhelmed by sheer numbers after his rider was slain. Silverwing survived the battle, but was so traumatized that she fled, flying to a small island where she lived alone for years, never accepting another rider, eventually dying of old age and loneliness. The tale of the Bronze Fury and the Silver Dragon ended not in glory, but in betrayal and tragedy. Their bond to each other broken by war, their service to House Targaryen corrupted by the ambitions of unworthy riders. After the Dance of the Dragons ended, the realm was exhausted. The Targaryen dynasty was shattered, and only 4 dragons remained alive in all of Westeros. The war had consumed nearly every dragon, killed nearly every experienced rider, and destroyed the infrastructure that had supported dragon breeding and care. The 4 survivors were all young, all traumatized by the war, and all showed signs of the damage the dance had wrought. The last dragon to hatch during or immediately after the dance was Morning, a small she-dragon with pink and pale scales who bonded with Lady Rhaena, daughter of Prince Daemon. Morning was beautiful but fragile, hatched at a time when something had fundamentally changed in the world's magic. She never grew large. Even as she matured, she remained small, barely large enough to carry a rider comfortably, far smaller than dragons of previous generations had been at the same age. Morning was ridden only a few times, as she remained too small for regular riding and seemed uncomfortable with the activity. Some Meisters speculated that being raised in the dragon pit rather than wild on Dragonstone stunted dragon growth, pointing to how confined dragons never reached the sizes of their wild-raised ancestors. Others believed the Targaryens' weakening bloodline affected the dragons bonded to them, that centuries of intermarriage and the trauma of the dance had damaged something essential in both family and dragons. Still others whispered that the Maesters themselves had conspired against the dragons, using subtle poisons or spells to ensure they would not thrive, though such claims were never proven. Morning lived through the reign of Aegon III, called the Dragonbane for the extinction that occurred during his rule, but she produced no viable eggs despite multiple clutches. Her eggs turned to stone, as did the eggs of the other surviving dragons, and attempts to hatch them with fire or magic all failed. As the years passed, Morning grew more lethargic, eating less, flying rarely, spending most of her time sleeping in her lair. Eventually, she stopped eating altogether, and one day she simply did not wake. She died quietly in her sleep, the last dragon to die a natural death for many generations. Her passing went largely unmourned, for by then people had begun to see dragons as harbingers of war rather than symbols of power, and many believed the realm was better off without them. The last Targaryen dragons were born in the dragon pit during the reign of Aegon III, and they were pitiful creatures, proof that something had gone terribly wrong with dragon breeding. These final hatchlings were small, deformed, unable to breathe proper fire or fly properly. Some had wings that would not fully develop, remaining stunted and useless. Others had scales that grew incorrectly, twisted and malformed, causing them constant pain. Many were born blind or with other defects. All of them struggled to live, suffering from illnesses that no maester could cure. The dragon keepers tried everything to save them, adjusting their diet, changing their living conditions, using what remained of Valyrian dragon lore. But nothing worked. One by one, they died, each smaller and weaker than the last, each living only days or weeks before succumbing to their various ailments. The final dragon died in 153 AC, a tiny, malformed creature that barely lived a year. It was small enough to fit in a man's arms, its scales pale and sickly, its eyes clouded, its breath producing only small puffs of smoke rather than true flame. When it died, the dragon keepers carried its small body to the king, and Aegon III, who had witnessed the death of his mother by dragonfire, who had watched dragons destroy his family, reportedly said, "The last dragon is dead." Its death marked the official extinction of dragons in Westeros, ending an era that had defined Targaryen rule for nearly 3 centuries. Whether the dragon's decline was natural, the result of being kept in the dragon pit rather than wild on Dragonstone where they had always thrived, or something more sinister involving maesters who feared magic and worked to eliminate it, remains a matter of debate among scholars. What is certain is that after that last dragon's death, the Targaryens ruled without their greatest strength, their power slowly waning over the following generations, their ability to control the realm diminishing as the memory of dragons faded. The Age of Dragons had ended, and a long cold winter of dragonless years began, a winter that would last for more than 150 years. The mystery of dragon eggs became increasingly important as the decades passed without living dragons. Targaryen kings and princes collected dragon eggs obsessively, hoping that one might hatch, that the magic might return. Some eggs were ancient, laid centuries before and turned to stone through age and neglect. Others were more recent, laid by the last dragons before they died, but these too refused to hatch no matter what was tried. The eggs were beautiful objects. Some were black with red or gold veining, others were pale cream with silver patterns. Still others were green or blue or combinations of colors. They were kept in the royal treasury, displayed as precious artifacts, symbols of lost glory. Various attempts were made to hatch them over the years, placing them in fires, surrounding them with sorcery, taking them to volcanic regions, even sacrificing animals or people in blood magic rituals. None of it worked. The eggs remained stone, beautiful but lifeless, mocking reminders of what House Targaryen had lost. 3 particular eggs became legendary, though their origin remains disputed. Some believe they were laid by Dreamfire decades before the dance, others claim they came from different dragons. These 3 eggs, one black and scarlet, one cream and gold, one green and bronze, would eventually pass through many hands over the decades, bought and sold, stolen and recovered, traveling from Westeros to Essos and back again. Elisa Farman, the adventurer and friend of Princess Rhaena, famously stole 3 dragon eggs from Dragonstone and sold them in Bravos to finance her voyage to the Sunset Sea. Whether those stolen eggs were the same ones that eventually came to Daenerys Targaryen remains unconfirmed speculation, but the timeline and descriptions match closely enough that many believe the connection is real. If true, it means the eggs traveled an incredible journey across centuries and continents before finally finding the person who could hatch them. The tragedy of Summerhall occurred decades after the last dragon died, when King Aegon V called Aegon the Unlikely because his path to the throne had been so improbable, became obsessed with returning dragons to the world. Aegon V was a good king, beloved by the small folk for his reforms and his common touch. But he believed that House Targaryen needed dragons to maintain their power and protect the realm. He gathered dragon eggs from the treasury, eggs that had been stoned for generations, and consulted with pyromancers, sorcerers, and anyone who claimed knowledge of the old Valyrian magic. At Summerhall, a pleasure palace in the Stormlands built by his ancestors, Aegon V attempted a ritual to hatch dragon eggs, possibly timed with the birth of his great-grandson Rhaegar, hoping that the combination of royal blood, fire, and magic might succeed where other attempts had failed. The specific details of what happened that day are lost. Most witnesses died, and those who survived spoke little of it, traumatized by what they had seen. What is known is that whatever magic or folly was attempted went terribly wrong. Fire consumed Summerhall, spreading faster than natural fire should, burning with unnatural heat that suggested wildfire or dragon flame. The palace, a beautiful structure of white stone and gardens, became an inferno within minutes. King Aegon V perished in the flames, trying perhaps to control the fire or to save the eggs, or simply caught by the catastrophe he had unleashed. His eldest son, Prince Duncan, died beside him, as did the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Duncan the Tall, the king's oldest friend and protector. Many others died in the catastrophe. Servants, guards, ladies-in-waiting, all caught by fire that gave no warning and no mercy. The beautiful palace was destroyed, reduced to a burned shell, its gardens turned to ash, its white stones blackened and cracked. No dragons hatched from the attempt. The eggs, if they survived, were lost in the rubble or taken by those who fled. The tragedy became a warning tale, told for generations, a reminder that dragon magic was dangerous, that the age of dragons was past, that attempting to bring them back could only end in disaster. Yet, despite the horror of Summerhall, despite the deaths and destruction, the dream of dragons never entirely died among the Targaryens. Some said the tragedy proved that fire and blood were still the Targaryen way, that even their attempts at magic ended in flames. Daenerys Targaryen received 3 dragon eggs as a wedding gift when she married Khal Drogo, presented to her by Illyrio Mopatis, the wealthy magister of Pentos who had arranged her marriage. The eggs had been petrified, turned to stone by age and lack of proper care, their surfaces beautiful but seemingly dead, their insides crystallized over centuries or perhaps millennia. One was black with scarlet patterns that looked like veins of blood running through dark stone. Another was cream with golden veins that caught the light like precious metal. The third was green with bronze highlights that shimmered when turned. They were beautiful objects, valuable as curiosities and art pieces, but everyone who saw them agreed they were simply stone shaped like eggs, that no life remained within them, that whatever magic they once held had died long ago. Daenerys developed an unusual attachment to these stone eggs from the moment she received them. keeping them close at all times, warming them in fires despite being told it was pointless, treating them as precious things even though everyone around her said they were simply beautiful rocks. She would hold them while bathing, sleep with them near her bed, carry them when she traveled. She did not know why she felt drawn to them, could not explain the connection she felt, but the instinct was strong and undeniable. Something in her blood, some remnant of ancient Valyrian magic that had slept in Targaryen veins for generations, recognized what these eggs were, what they could become. After Drogo's death, when Daenerys built his funeral pyre and decided to walk into the flames with the 3 stone eggs, everyone assumed she had gone mad with grief, that she intended to die with her husband. But Daenerys was not mad. She was manifesting something that had been dormant in Targaryen blood since the last dragons died, awakening magic that the world thought was gone forever. The night Daenerys walked into Drogo's funeral pyre would become one of the most significant moments in history. The night magic returned to the world. The pyre burned hot, fed by oil and wood, and the horse sacrificed to carry Drogo to the afterlife. Daenerys placed the 3 stone eggs among the flames and stepped into the fire herself, and the Dothraki who watched expected to see her burn and die. Instead, as the fire raged through the night, something impossible happened. The eggs, exposed to the funeral fire and whatever magic Daenerys unknowingly channeled through her Targaryen blood and her grief and her will, began to crack. The stone shells that had protected them for so long split open, and from within, living creatures emerged. When the fire died and the ashes cooled with the dawn, Daenerys emerged unburned, her clothes consumed but her skin untouched, and with her were 3 living dragons, the first to be born in more than 150 years. They were tiny, barely larger than cats, their scales soft and their wings fragile, but they were alive. One was black with red markings, matching the egg he had come from. Another was green with bronze, his scales already showing the colors he would carry. The third was cream and gold, pale and beautiful. The impossible had happened. Dragons had returned to the world, the magic that had died with the last Targaryen dragons, the power that had made the house, Targaryen, great, had been reborn in fire and blood, and the girl who emerged from the flames was no longer just a princess in exile, but something more. The mother of dragons, the one who had achieved what kings and maesters had tried and failed to do for more than a century. Drogon was the largest and most aggressive of Daenerys' 3 dragons, hatched from the black and scarlet egg, and from the moment he emerged from the flames, he showed a fierce independence and a powerful will that matched his dark coloring. His scales were black as midnight, with highlights of deep crimson that looked like embers glowing in darkness, and his eyes glowed like molten copper, bright and fierce. His horns curved back from his skull in a way that reminded those who knew history of Balerion, the Black Dread, and as he grew, the comparison became more apt. Drogon's coloring, his size advantage over his brothers, his aggressive temperament, all echoed the greatest dragon who had ever lived. From the moment he hatched, Drogon showed a fierce independence, often refusing commands from Daenerys, acting on his own instincts, doing what he wanted rather than what he was told. He was the first to breathe fire, the first to kill prey, the first to fly, always pushing boundaries. He was named for Khal Drogo, Daenerys' late husband, and he seemed to carry something of the Dothraki warlord's wild spirit. Untamed, powerful, refusing to be controlled. As Drogon grew, he quickly outpaced his brothers in size and ferocity, becoming Daenerys' primary mount, the dragon most bonded to her despite, or perhaps because of his willfulness. His fire burned the hottest of the three, with flames so intense they could melt stone, and his roar carried the furthest, echoing across miles like thunder. Drogon's black scales reminded many of Balerion, the Black Dread, and as he grew larger with each passing year, the comparison became more apt. He was not merely a dragon, he was becoming a force of nature, just as Balerion had been, a creature whose presence changed the world around him. But unlike the dragons of old Targaryen history, who grew up in a world that remembered and feared dragons, Drogon was growing up in a world that had forgotten dragons, and his presence terrified as much as it awed, reminding people of powers they thought were safely relegated to history and legend. Rhaegal was named for Daenerys' brother Rhaegar, the Silver Prince who died before she was born, and his scales were green with bronze undertones that caught the light beautifully, while his eyes were bronze with flecks of gold that seemed to glow in certain lights. His wings had orange copper webbing that caught the light beautifully when he flew, creating a stunning visual effect against the sky. Rhaegal was slightly smaller than Drogon, but larger than Viserion, and his temperament fell between his brothers. Not as fierce and independent as Drogon, but not as calm and tractable as Viserion. He showed intelligence and awareness beyond what one might expect from a creature so young, responding to Daenerys' commands more reliably than Drogon, but with less immediate obedience than Viserion, as if he evaluated each command before deciding whether to comply. Rhaegal's fire burned green gold, an unusual color that marked him as unique, and when he roared, there was a particular resonance to the sound, almost musical, different from the harsh screech of Drogon or the softer call of Viserion. He was a magnificent creature, embodying both power and grace, a balance between his brothers' extremes. As the dragons grew from hatchlings to juveniles, Rhaegal often flew alongside Drogon, the two of them circling and calling to each other in the sky, practicing the aerial maneuvers that were instinctive to dragons, learning together how to bank and dive and use the wind. Watching them fly together was to witness the return of something ancient and terrible, a reminder that dragons were not pets or tools, but apex predators who had once ruled the skies, who were reclaiming their place in the world whether humans were ready for them or not. Viserion was the most gentle of the three, with cream-colored scales that had veins of pale gold running through them, like precious metal woven into his hide. His eyes were amber, warm and bright, less fierce than his brother's copper and bronze gazes, and his wings had gold rose membranes that glowed when sunlight passed through them. He was named for Daenerys' brother Viserys, though the dragon's temperament was far kinder than the cruel prince who bore that name. Where Viserys had been petty and vicious, Viserion was gentle and patient. Viserion was the calmest of the three dragons, the most likely to accept Daenerys' presence and commands without resistance, the one who seemed to understand what was wanted of him most quickly. His flames burned gold and orange, and when he breathed fire, there was almost a beauty to it, the flames rolling out in waves rather than explosive bursts, more controlled than his brother's fire. As the dragons grew from hatchlings to juveniles, Viserion remained the most social, sometimes approaching Daenerys' companions and allowing them near, though never letting anyone but Daenerys actually touch him. His nature made him seem less dangerous than his brothers, more approachable, almost friendly. But this was an illusion born of temperament rather than reality. Viserion's fire could kill just as surely as Drogon's. His teeth and claws were equally sharp. his strength was only marginally less than his brother's. He was a dragon, and all dragons carried death in their breath, carried danger in their very nature. The gentleness was real, but should not be mistaken for weakness or domestication. Valyrian was wild, as all dragons are wild, and his calm demeanor was a choice he made, not a limitation of his nature. In the streets of Astapor, during Daenerys' acquisition of the Unsullied army, Drogon descended from the sky at her signal in what would become the first demonstration of Targaryen dragonfire in over 150 years. The slave masters who had thought to sell her soldiers and keep her dragons, who had laughed at the young girl and her small dragons, learned that even young dragons are deadly. Drogon's flames caught them completely unprepared, washing over the plaza in a wave of fire that turned their golden tokar robes into funeral shrouds in seconds. The fire melted chains and turned stone black with soot, the heat so intense that those caught in it died before they could scream. It was the first time Daenerys had used her dragons as weapons of war, following in the ancient Targaryen tradition of conquest through dragonfire, and the effect was devastating, not just physically, but psychologically. The sight of the black dragon descending on wings that blotted out the sun, fire streaming from his jaws like a river of liquid flame, created terror in those who had never seen a dragon before, who knew them only as legends from old stories. The people of Slaver's Bay learned what Westeros had learned 3 centuries before, that armies and walls meant nothing against dragons, that all the wealth and power in the world could not protect against dragonfire. Daenerys walked away from the burning city with an army of Unsullied, 3 growing dragons, and the beginning of a legend that would spread across Essos like wildfire. The Dragon Queen had been born in fire, and now she was announcing her presence to the world with flame and blood. As the dragons grew larger in Meereen, their appetites grew proportionally, and feeding 3 growing dragons became an enormous undertaking that strained the city's resources. Dragons need to eat constantly while growing, consuming vast amounts of meat: goats, sheep, cattle, anything large enough to sustain their expanding bodies. Daenerys tried to provide food from the city's markets and from dedicated herds, but feeding 3 dragons who were doubling in size every few months was nearly impossible. Eventually, they began hunting on their own, flying out over the countryside around Meereen and taking livestock from farmers who could ill afford the loss. Drogon, in particular, grew more independent, sometimes disappearing for days at a time before returning, ranging farther and farther from the city, learning to hunt and kill on his own. The people of Meereen, who had never seen dragons and had no cultural tradition of accepting their presence, who knew nothing of how Targaryens had managed dragons in Westeros, grew fearful. Then came the day that changed everything. A farmer brought the burned bones of his daughter to Daenerys' throne room, laying them at her feet in silent accusation. The child, a girl named Hosea, had been watching her family's goats in the hills when one of the dragons, likely Drogon, though no one witnessed it, mistook her for prey. The reality of what dragons were, not magical protectors or symbols of power, but dangerous predators who could not always distinguish between appropriate and inappropriate prey, struck Daenerys deeply. A child had died because of her dragons, an innocent killed by creatures under her nominal control. The weight of that death, the responsibility for it, shook Daenerys' confidence and forced her to confront the cost of having dragons in a populated area. She made the painful decision to chain Rhaegal and Viserion in the crypts beneath her pyramid, locking them in darkness for their safety and the city's, though Drogon had already disappeared and could not be captured. The two dragons, confused and distressed by the sudden captivity, were locked in darkness, their growth stunted by confinement, their spirits broken by the loss of freedom. Drogon had flown away from Meereen during the period when his brothers were chained, disappearing into the vastness of the Dothraki Sea, and in that time alone, he transformed from a dragon under human control to something wilder and more dangerous. He was growing wild, hunting for himself across the grasslands, taking down horses and even attacking Khalasar camps, becoming more dragon and less domesticated creature with each passing day. He learned to hunt large prey, to kill swiftly, to avoid the arrows and spears of the Dothraki who tried to bring him down. When he returned to Meereen, it was dramatic and perfectly timed. He descended into Daznak's fighting pit where Daenerys was watching gladiatorial games, arriving at the moment she needed him most, when she was surrounded by enemies and had no escape. The black dragon landed in the center of the pit with a crash that shook the stands, sending warriors and fighters fleeing in terror, his presence transforming a coordinated attack on Daenerys into chaos. And Daenerys, seeing her moment, seeing her dragon returned to her, climbed onto his back. It was the first time she had truly ridden him, mounted him deliberately rather than being carried as a passenger, and when Drogon launched into the sky with her clinging to his spines, it marked a transformation in their relationship. They were not girl and pet anymore, but rider and dragon, bonded in the ancient way of Valyria, united in purpose. Drogon carried her away from the city, flying until he reached a rocky outcrop in the wilderness where he could rest and feed. There, Daenerys lived with her dragon for a time, learning his moods, understanding his needs, becoming less a human who commanded a dragon and more a dragon rider in the truest sense. She learned to read his body language, to understand when he was hungry or tired or agitated, to work with his instincts rather than against them. When she eventually returned to Meereen, she was changed, and so was her relationship with Drogon, no longer trying to control him, but rather partnering with him, understanding that dragons cannot be truly tamed, only bonded with. Dragons grow throughout their entire lives, never stopping as long as they live and have sufficient food, a biological reality that explains why ancient dragons like Balerion and Vhagar became so enormous. A dragon's size is limited only by age, food supply, and living conditions. Balerion, who lived for approximately 2 centuries, grew large enough to swallow mammoths whole and cast entire towns in shadow. His skull larger than a horse and carriage together. Younger dragons like Drogon, only a few years old during Daenerys' time in Meereen, were already larger than horses, but nowhere near their full potential size. Given decades or centuries, if well-fed and free to grow, Drogon could potentially match Balerion's immense size or even exceed it. However, growth can be severely stunted by confinement. Dragons kept in the dragon pit of King's Landing did not grow as large as dragons raised wild on Dragonstone, and this was proven by the gradual diminishment of dragons during the late Targaryen era. The environment matters tremendously. Dragons need space, freedom to fly long distances, and abundant food to reach their maximum potential. A dragon's scales also harden with age, becoming increasingly difficult to pierce, which is why older dragons like Vhagar were nearly impervious to arrows and spears, their hides tougher than the finest armor. The oldest dragons were essentially flying fortresses, their scales so hard that only other dragons' teeth or specially made scorpion bolts could pierce them. their size allowing them to crush buildings simply by landing on them, their presence alone enough to make armies surrender. Dragonfire burns hotter than any natural flame, hot enough to melt stone and turn sand into glass, hot enough to make steel glow white and then liquefy into pools of molten metal. The fire is not produced by any mundane chemical reaction, but by magic inherent to the dragon itself, a manifestation of the same mysterious forces that allow dragons to fly despite their size, that let them exist at all. Different dragons' flames burn different colors based on the individual dragon. Drogons burn red and black, Rhaegals burn greenish gold, Viserions burn golden orange, and historical dragons showed similar variations. The heat is intense enough that those caught in dragon flame often die instantly, their flesh consumed so completely that not even bones remain, turned to ash in seconds. Stone structures exposed to sustained dragonfire will begin to melt and flow like candle wax, as seen at Harrenhal, where towers twisted and fused, creating the haunting ruins that stand today. There is no defense against dragonfire in terms of armor. No material worn by humans can withstand it. No shield thick enough to protect. No helmet strong enough to keep out the heat. The only protection is distance, cover, or killing the dragon before it breathes. Water quenches ordinary fire, but dragonfire burns so hot it can boil water around it, turning lakes to steam. This supernatural heat is part of what makes dragons so terrifying in war. They are not merely dangerous animals, but manifestations of destructive power that surpasses natural limits, creatures that break the rules of the physical world simply by existing. The bond between a dragon and its rider creates a connection that goes beyond physical proximity, a mystical link that writers describe as intimate and profound. Riders report being able to sense their dragon's moods, sometimes even at a distance, feeling echoes of what the dragon feels: hunger, aggression, contentment, fear. When a rider dies, the dragon often becomes despondent, refusing food and seeking solitude, sometimes dying soon after seemingly from grief or loss of purpose. Other dragons, like Vhagar, eventually accept new riders after a period of mourning, but the transition is never easy, and the new bond is never quite the same as the original. The bond also means that dragons are fiercely protective of their riders in battle, defending them even at cost to themselves, attacking anything that threatens the person on their back with single-minded fury. This loyalty makes dragons extraordinarily dangerous in combat, as they combine animal ferocity with protective purpose and intelligent tactics. Conversely, a rider can influence a dragon's behavior to some degree, calming an aggressive dragon or encouraging a reluctant one to fight, though the degree of control varies by rider and dragon. However, in moments of high stress or when primal instincts are triggered, dragons may ignore commands, as Vhagar did when she killed Arax despite Aemon's attempts to stop her. The bond is strong, but not absolute control. Dragons remain fundamentally wild creatures who choose to accept riders, and that choice can be overridden by instinct. Dragons are tied to magic in ways that scholars and meisters do not fully understand. Connections that suggest dragons are not merely magical creatures, but somehow fundamental to magic's existence in the world. They seemed to have emerged from or alongside magic in the ancient world, and their presence appears to strengthen magical forces everywhere. When the last Targaryen dragons died in 153 AC, many reported that magic faded from the world. Prophecies became less clear, ancient spells stopped working, glass candles went dark, and mystical creatures became rarer. Red priests found their visions dimming. Shadowbinders in Ashai reported their arts growing weaker. Even the others beyond the wall seemed to grow dormant. When Daenerys' dragons hatched, magic began returning to the world in measurable ways. Red priests and priestesses found their powers strengthening dramatically, able to resurrect the dead and see visions in flames with clarity not known for generations. Shadowbinders in Ashai noted changes in their art, their shadows becoming more responsive and powerful. Even the glass candles of the Citadel, which had been dark and dormant for centuries, used by Meisters only as decorative, reminders of lost magic, began to burn again with pale flame, allowing communication across vast distances as they had in ancient times. This connection suggests that dragons are not merely magical creatures, but somehow fundamental to magic's existence in the world, that their presence opens channels or breaks barriers that allow magic to flow. Whether dragons create magic or magic creates dragons remains unknown. The relationship appears to be symbiotic, each sustaining the other. What is certain is that a world with living dragons is fundamentally different from a world without them, not just in terms of power and politics, but in the basic functioning of supernatural forces throughout the realm. In the interpretation presented by the television series, events diverged significantly from the source material in ways that remain unconfirmed in the books. In this version, Viserion met a fate beyond the wall in the frozen north, struck down by a spear of ice thrown by the Night King. The cream gold dragon fell into a frozen lake and was later reanimated as a white dragon, his scales turning blue-white with ice, his fire transformed into cold blue flame that shattered rather than melted. This undead Viserion breached the wall at Eastwatch, and the barrier fell. Later, during the battle at Winterfell, when the Night King was destroyed, the magic animating the Whites was broken, and Viserion collapsed and remained still. This version exists in the adaptation and represents one possible trajectory, though whether the books will follow a similar path remains unknown. The legacy of dragons in Westeros and across the world is written in melted stone and ancient songs, in the changed geography of continents and the altered course of history. Every great castle bears some mark of their passing. Harrenhal's twisted towers stand as eternal monuments to dragonfire's power. The Dragon Pit's ruined dome reminds all who see it of the storming that killed the last great dragons. Scattered bones found in ancient battlefields speak of conflicts long forgotten. The small folk tell stories to their children about dragons, tales that mix history with legend until it becomes impossible to distinguish what truly happened from what people wish had happened, what they fear might happen again. Dragons represent the old world, the age of magic and heroes, the time before Meisters and their chains tried to explain everything through reason, before the world became small and knowable and safe. They are proof that the world was once larger, stranger, more dangerous and more wonderful than it is now, that forces existed beyond human understanding or control. To see a dragon is to glimpse something beyond the ordinary bounds of life, to understand that humans, for all their cities and armies and accumulated wisdom, are not the greatest power in the world, that there are mysteries that cannot be conquered or controlled, only witnessed and survived. This knowledge is both terrifying and exhilarating, humbling and elevating simultaneously. It is why even the enemies of the Targaryens could not help but feel awe when dragons flew overhead. Why even those who died in Dragonflame became legends themselves, transformed by their proximity to something so far beyond the mundane. Dragons force humans to recognize their own smallness, and in that recognition, something profound occurs. A humbling that is also an elevation, a reminder that the world contains mysteries that transcend human ambition, that some powers are too great to be possessed, only experienced. And now, with 3 dragons flying in the skies of Essos, with Daenerys Targaryen reclaiming her family's ancient legacy, the Age of Dragons has returned, and the world will never be quite the same again. For better or worse, in fire and blood, as it has always been for House Targaryen.